was a prized import, kind is purchased at the corner store, and a month's supply of joy shipped to your door. But I've worked the fields, and what's mine is yours. Your garden blossomed with care, peace lilies adorn your hair, like a faithful maple lends all of its support. I've dug deeply, and what's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All that's mine, the work of mine. All that's mine is yours.
I remember you came home from war. Your branches were all but torn, so I kissed your face and softly implored. I've tended your seeds, and what's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All is yours, both love and war. All that's mine is yours.
Our children grew tall as firs, wept like willows outside your hearse. But I know you left in your bureau drawer, said, remember babies, all that's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All that's mine is yours. All that's mine, I've lived my life. Now all that's mine is yours.
Time about it.
Hello, patrons. We had this whole conversation. There's like a giant timer.
It was not me.
There's like, I don't know what else to do.
We're the nuisance nook for a reason, okay?
Yeah. You know what? They never start the Muppet Show with those two old guys in the top, though, okay? Like, there's a point for that. Welcome, patrons, friends, family. Thanks for joining us on this special release event edition, special coronavirus public event / Good Friday, all kinds of new things going on. So, gosh, in putting this together, I could hardly believe that it's only been a month since the last one. But we can talk more all about that after we listen to the song. So, if you are on YouTube, know that if you're logged in, you can comment. So after we listen to the song, if you've got questions, anything you want to share, things that moved you, touched you, things that popped into your head, whatever. Type it in. We'd love to have some online chat with you as well. So, but for right now, we'll jump straight into this month's song, and then we'll talk about it. So here we go. All We Let Them Take.
You had every choice to use your voice and end the pain. The angels would have come and darkened the sun with heaven's fury as you exit the holy city, barely living, bearing all these I can look at your face, and all we let them take. Open heaven's doors, let it pour my tears and anger. Rise, you saints, and mourn for the Lord. You wrote would save you. Tear the veil in the holy of holies. If men want answers, let them know me. I can look at your face, and we let them take to the grave and disgrace like they disgrace themselves.
Yeah, so pretty. So pretty at the end. All right, so I'll give you guys a moment to type in any questions, thoughts you have while you're doing that. I'll tell you just a little bit more of the background, where the song came from. So, I spent most of my adult life outside of the formal church. And even prior to that, was not like, didn't have a tradition of celebrating Holy Weeks or anything like that. So the idea of like a Good Friday service, I don't think I had ever been to one that I could recall in my life. And so a couple years ago, I was talking with my pastor and a friend. We were standing in a parking lot, and my pastor was saying, "Hey, we're going to do this Good Friday service," and I was like, "Okay." And but in that, he was wanting to do some things that caused us to think about this story that for most of us as Western Americans, whether we identify as Christians or not, it's a story we feel like we know. And so whenever we hear it, we just sort of like rush the cliff notes and move on, and that's it, right? And so as an artist, I thought for a minute, like, actually, this seems like this would be one of the more challenging topics to just tackle as an artist, to try to find a way to have this story be fresh again, to see it through new eyes. So I went home and, first week was just like trying a bunch of different perspectives, not fresh at all. And after like a couple weeks of this, I just felt God say like, hey, I want you to see this not as an event, not as a transaction, but I want you to see it how I saw it, from the eyes of a father. And it was through that that I was then able to see Jesus as a human, like not as this unimpervious God, and his relationship with his father not as like, unmotivated by emotion, untouchable, even though like knowing what would come into the future, actually like it put me in that position, like with my son or my daughter or my wife. If I had to watch them be violated and abused violently, think of whatever, I know what my scenarios are, but for all of us, those might be a little different. Like, what's just the most horrendous thing you could think physically that could be done in front of you to someone you care the most about in the world? There comes a point that even if you knew, like, well, at the end, like, it's okay, and actually, like, it's going to save the world, and they're going to be fine. There's still, even in the midst of all of that, there comes a point where you just can't watch anymore. Like, you can't watch someone you love go through that. And so I was able to see this story through those eyes of a father watching his son be just brutalized. And even in that word, like that doesn't even help capture it. Like, I feel like actually violate gets us a lot closer emotionally to that, like that makes your palms sweat a little bit thinking about it. Watching that occur, and there comes a point where God, the Father, is so moved that he says, I can't watch this anymore. So that's where the song came from. That was the story of its origins. Wow, so no questions so far. You guys are all still taking it in, huh? Rob said, so good. Thanks, man. Thanks for joining. It's good to have you with us. So when I was getting ready to record this, I had been thinking about recording this, for the last couple years, but honestly, what I do musically isn't like, it's just not super overtly Christian. Just to put that out there, right? Like we all know this. And yet it is based on my relationship with God. It's inspired by that, informed by that. But it felt like taking something that was this, not just overtly Christian, but actually like intentionally sort of founded on a rich liturgical history from thousands of years of the history of the church, of meditating on and reviewing these events. And in the same reason that brought this song about, trying to find life in that still, trying to connect with that in a way that is actually emotionally viable, as opposed to just like reading a mortgage contract, you know? Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I was working on the album art for this, I was like, I'm just going to go find some like French or Italian master who, also did the same thing, right? Stood on the shoulders of others who for hundreds and thousands of years had recreated visually iconic images, to help draw our attention to this story in fresh new ways. And so I found this guy, Léon Bonnat. He's early 19th century French painter. And amazingly, like a lot of his catalog is actually public domain now. The really high quality images. On the audio post on Patreon, in the liner notes, there's a link right to his Wikipedia if you guys want to see more of his work. He has an amazing portrait of Job. That's just fantastic. Okay, so we got some questions now. So Christy said, who's that lady with the amazing voice in the background? Excellent question, Christy. It's right where I wanted to go. So as I was getting ready to record this song, I just, in my mind, I was like, this cannot just be one voice. Because I felt like this event, this moment in time, right, that had to be witnessed by more than just like one solitary person, right? Like more than just God the Father, like watching this, right? Like all of heaven is watching this and frankly in as much awe as anyone else, right? Like this, we don't get any, like there's messages throughout like the prophetic scriptures that point to this, but it's kind of like no one saw this coming, right? And so I wanted to have more voices. And so it just so happens that that our very good friend Lisette moved in with us at the beginning of February, which was when I started working on this song. And I sat down with her and I said, hey, so I have this song. I basically just hear piano and guitar and my voice. And then I want to give you like a blank canvas to sing whatever else you can possibly hear on this song. Might not use it all, but let's just do whatever. So Lisette sat with it for a few weeks, and then we came up in the studio and spent 3 days recording 29 tracks of her background vocals. And that is what we have. Just this amazingness. I love how it switches between like, it's almost like it's one voice, right? Like you can almost hear like the Father and the Holy Spirit. And then there's parts where it's clearly like, this is like just angelic. The angels are just like, whoa, So yeah, just absolutely beautiful. And that was Lisette. In fact, when we sat down to record it, it was the first time since I've been doing this where I was like, I don't know what we're doing. So you just like tell me and I'll like make tracks and we'll just go with it. Is that about how it went? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that was great.
Yep. All right. Yeah, so Rob said, how does this fit with your broader musical work? Yeah, it actually feels like it's tangential. I feel like I'm mispronouncing that word. Tangential. In some ways. Because musically and sort of stylistically, I really did want it to have more of a formal feel to it. I mean, I don't sing formally, but yet like the dynamics of this song, the guitar with the sort of triplet feel that continues on. Certainly the piano has more of a classical feel to it, and then obviously when you get those other vocals in. So I felt like I wanted to record this song and have it have more of a timeless, but in a classical sort of way. And then again, like I said, lyrically, I mean, this song is just, it's extremely direct about, the biblical events as we read about them and have read about them for thousands of years. But the shift then is the perspective, right? Like, whose perspective are we reading it from? So, yeah, I would say that this song feels tangential in a way, but where I think it fits in the broader scope is that artistry of the vision of perspective, which was really interesting. I was having a conversation with an art collector who put in an installation in our church. And it was fascinating to talk to him because he's really dialed into the rich artistic history of the church and the efforts that have been made over hundreds and thousands of years to reinform, right, these same stories that we've heard for generations and generations, but to reinform them through different mediums so that we can see them fresh again. And so this certainly is the first work that I've released that I would say goes along those lines of, like, the ancient iconography of the church and that sort of thing. Let's see. Who's Christy D. Lisette? She said, just busload of Lisette Fox fan club groupies here.
Oh my god. Hi, Christy and busload.
That's awesome.
That's funny. You met Christy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So here's another question. So this is from Rob. He said, I know Visio Divina and Lectio Divina. Is there some sort of audio divina engaging the art of music the way we engage visually through meditation? Yeah, that's a great question. I think to answer this question, I think I'd have to kind of cut in the middle of that and say, I feel like that's actually something that we even 30, 40 years ago had. In the music industry, we call it deep listening. So the way you used to put on a record, right? And you'd listen to 25 or 30 minutes straight of something. And so that informed what artists made then, right? Because sometimes you'd only have 2 or 3 songs on that side. So songs could be longer because the expectation was, even radio was set up in album-oriented format. So we listened to things longer, and I think that changed the way that we listened differently because we listened longer. As a musical artist, certainly when I listen to music, I hear it visually. So it creates things in my mind, whether that be the music itself, creating pictures or landscapes, or, it's not like a synesthesia thing where I like see colors, but certainly like it informs that third vision of my mind. And when I've talked to people that really love music and that do deep listening, their experience of music is similar in the way that it creates a visual aspect in their mind as they listen. And I feel like in a lot of ways, certainly the streaming culture of today just doesn't really lend itself to that. And in fact, in the industry, we call it passive listening, actually. So it's where something's there, but we're not actively engaging it, and so it's not actively informing. It might be passively informing. I mean, that's a thing, right? Music passively informs even our physiology, but it's certainly not an active thing. And I think the active piece is essential to an audio divina. So great. Yeah, great question. So Christy said, what does all we let them take mean? Fantastic question. So yeah, in viewing the violation of Jesus, the violence on him and his body, through the eyes of the Father, where I had to separate my personal experience from what this experience had to have been like for God the Father, was that there are any scenario that I could envision where I would have to watch my child, my wife, go through this for hours. I would have to be physically incapacitated. It would physically, I would have to be incapable of changing that scenario, right? Like in trying to envision that, my first impulse is, I will stop this. You will have to kill me first, right? I think for a lot of us, most of us probably, that would be true. And yet, for God the Father, that was not the case. This was actually something he was allowing because he could have stopped it at any point. Jesus also, that's the very first line, you had every choice to use your voice and end the pain. Angels would have come, darkened the sun with heaven's fury. We see that even in the temptation of Jesus, right? Like even Satan understood this. Like, throw yourself down, angels will come, they will protect you. Like, you have that level of power at your disposal. So there's a restraint on the part of Jesus and his Father in partnership, saying, we are going to let them take this. As brutal as that is, as much as this costs us, as hard as this is, in fact, I can't even watch this anymore, and yet I'm still going to choose to let them take this, because this is the way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So great question, Christy.
Yeah, and can I say something?
Yeah, please speak to.
Yeah, I love too that line also made me think of the Holy Spirit as well, right? Like with the Father, almost like, so how I heard that line was the Holy Spirit and the Father almost, I mean, it feels like, right? Almost like in disbelief, like we're letting them take all of this. And so I love that it sort of brought the whole family, if you will, of the Trinity mm-hmm. into sort of the foreground. That it was like all of them were in this together, and they all had to be saying yes at the same time to this mm-hmm. like horrific, event to happen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because I think often we just think of it as either Jesus sort of by himself, like his experience mm-hmm. of it. And then sometimes we think about it as the Father and his experience of it, but to actually make a picture of the whole, the Trinity, all three, all experiencing this at the same time, was really a new way, certainly for me, to think about that.
And then even, right, like the angelic host,
right.
Right? Like that's like their, like, let us,
Because they would have come in
like let us in, what is going on,
Right.
Because it was a mystery, right? Like that was something that had been like this idea in the mind of the Father and agreed upon by the Son was a mystery. Like the idea existed, but yet was not grasped or understood by any other created being. I firmly believe that. Yeah. Whew, boy. So fantastic. Just really, really pleased with how this one turned out. So, we're coming up on 30 minutes. If you guys have any more questions or comments, feel free to type those in. We'll hang out for just another minute or so. Feel free to share this link with anyone that you think would be interested. This is public, and it'll stay up and remain public. I want to give a big thank you to my patrons who made the recording of this song and the releasing of it possible. Without you, these songs might come into the world, but no one would ever hear them. which I think is a shame, and there's 35 other people in the world that agree with me. So thank you for helping bring these songs into the world so they can be shared. And I guess with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you all so much for spending your Friday evening with us, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend and Easter. Much love. Maybe. Bye.